The spring semester of 7th grade was a special one for me. After moving back home from my old hometown and reconnecting with all my old friends, I started to get more and more into sports. And when 8th grade came along, I planned on playing football and basketball. But before I could do any of that, I had my eyes set on one goal, and that was the school's yearly 5K. Now, I don't know if your school had any of that because it's the only school I've seen that done it, but it didn't matter for me because I wanted to run it. So with that new knowledge, I started to train, or what I thought was training. In reality, it was me running around the block while my friend Zayden was on a bike yelling at me to pace myself. I don't remember what shoes I wore. I think they were basketball shoes. I don't even remember if I stretched. I think I just went raw and just ran.
Hey, yo!
All I knew is when it was time to race, I was not ready. I logged a time of 39 minutes and 40 seconds, which for anyone who runs cross country or 5Ks in general, know that that is not a very impressive time. So even though I ran an abysmal time and I was left lying on my back, wondering why did I do this, something inside of me told me that this is what I wanted to do. Fast forward to today, and it's a whole different story. That 39:45K time eventually dropped down to 19 minutes 50 seconds. I ran varsity track, and the fastest mile I was able to clock in a race was 5 minutes and 16 seconds. And even though I don't run for a team anymore, I still try my best to run at least 3 to 5 miles per week at an 8-minute per mile pace. It's not fast, but I've never enjoyed running more in my life until now. And it's because of these tips I'm going to share with you in this video that are the reason why I've been able to be sustainable and consistent within my running for the last 6 years. As someone whose running habits aren't really kept a secret, a lot of people come up to me and tell me about how they're starting to run again, or this is their first time running, and that's great because that's just what running does to you. They're high energy, they're excited, and even though they're sore, they know they're going to keep at it because it's running. Why wouldn't they? That's until I check back on them probably like 2 weeks, 4 weeks, a couple months later, and ask them about how's the running going, and suddenly that light in their eyes disappeared. Suddenly they're talking
like, I don't have enough time,
Or, geez, you know.
or then they start saying lifeless phrases like,
I'll start running again soon, don't worry about it.
if you're watching this video, it means you've probably experienced this like once or twice, but that doesn't mean you have to fall victim to this cycle of saying you're going to do it over and over again. In this video, you will have learned the tips that I've applied myself that not only makes running consistent, but keeps me healthy and makes running a necessary tool for my success in life. So if you want to be a consistent runner, don't look any farther because you found the place. First thing you're going to have to do if you want to become a consistent runner is that you have to make an identity shift. Now, this tip may seem unorthodox, but hear me out. The way you view yourself will ultimately affect what you do on a day-to-day basis. For example, I view myself as a YouTuber, so I make videos for wonderful people like you to watch. Along with that identity, I'm also a reader, a student, a runner who also likes to play sports like basketball. Among many other things that I like to do, they all come together and create the conglomerate that is Seth. This same concept of identity applied to just about everybody. Yet, we often take on these monikers of identities that we aren't necessarily proud of, or someone has labeled us and now we take that on negatively within ourselves. That's how we view it, which then ultimately affects what we do. But here's the neat thing about identity. We can shift it to whatever we desire. Now, what does that mean? With a little bit of elbow grease and some hope, you can convince yourself you're just about anything. Now, obviously, there's limits, like I'm 5'8" and not that athletic. I can't just say that I'm an NBA player, but I can believe I'm a good basketball player. I can believe that I'm someone who's athletic who likes to play basketball. I can believe many things within the same spectrum. I just may not necessarily have the title. And the same thing applies to running. So you may not be an Olympian runner, you may not be the fastest person, but you can consider yourself a fast person. You can consider yourself a runner, and that's what you need to do with your identity shift. You need to consider yourself a runner today. Even if you have been struggling to run for months and you haven't been able to do it within the last year or so, you are still a runner if you believe you are. You start telling yourself that in the mirror, you start believing it. You're like, okay, yeah, I'm a runner. I'm someone who runs. And slowly but surely, you start seeing those days that, okay, I'm going to go out and run even though I'm a little sore. You start seeing those days that say, okay, it may be a little cold and a little wet outside, but I'm still going to run. And when you make that identity shift in your mind, you start changing who you are. So instead of being someone that says, I'm trying to be a runner, you then say, I am a runner, and you start taking actions to validate that identity. Making an identity shift is hard and it will take time. But if you're willing to do it, the next 5 steps will come very easy. So once you accept that being a runner is a part of your identity, you should then go ahead and start scheduling or blocking out time to run. And that's because you and I are very busy people, which means our time is very valuable. Running, especially when you're running long distances, can take a lot of time, especially when you factor in getting ready and then showering after and stretching and all that, which you're already doing, right? So what I've seen from people who want to run but never seem to get around to it is that they always say something like,
I do it when I have the time.
but odds are, unless you have a really valid excuse, you probably do have the time. And even if you did have a valid excuse, let me ask you this question. If not now, then when? When are you ever gonna be less busy than now? Now you can say something like summer, but let's say you get to summer and you start picking up more stuff and suddenly you have less time for running than you thought you would. So now running just becomes a part of your mind that you want to do, but I just gotta make time for, when you could just start now, figure it out by putting it in your schedule and seeing where running can benefit your life. Because at the end of the day, running isn't meant to take over your life, it's meant to add to it and supplement everything you got going on. So the best method for that is blocking out time on a schedule and figuring out what routine works best for you. Some people work better in the morning, like myself, because I'm already up that early and I like showering before my day really starts. So run, get sweaty, shower. Some people do the afternoon, before or after work, depending what they're doing. They don't mind the heat. Some people do it at night when they get off of work or whenever it may be, because they like it cooler and it helps them go to bed. Whatever it may be, as long as it works for you, that is what matters the most. If it works for you, then stick to it. Don't try to be fancy. Don't try to mess anything up. Just stick to that because you know it works for you. So take the time now to make time for running so you won't have time as an excuse for why you can't run. Once you figured out that time, you'll want to follow step 3 very closely, and that's to go easy on your first couple weeks. From my experience, it's very easy to get motivated by a video like this and then start going out there and running like 5 miles. But in reality, that is the exact opposite of what you want to do. I've seen with my own eyes people run miles after miles on their first couple weeks, more than I do as someone who's been running consistently for a couple of years. And then by the end of the week, they'll tell me that, oh, they're really sore, and then next thing I know, they haven't ran for about 2 or 3 months when I check on them again. And to me, I wondered why that kept happening, and once I dug into it, I realized it was for 3 main reasons. First is that they're very, very sore. And that's because no matter what, in the beginning, you could be running 1 mile, you could be running 10 miles. No matter what, if you're putting on strain onto your body when it's not ready or when it's not trained, it's gonna hurt. So you're just gonna have to get used to getting sore. For many people starting out, they'll go very hard, and then that soreness will result in them not being able to do everyday tasks like walking around or even doing something like putting their clothes on. And that kind of discomfort discourages them from wanting to run again. The second reason is injuries. You think soreness is bad? When that soreness doesn't go away and you realize it's potentially a sprain or maybe even a tear, you don't really look forward to your next run. Your body needs time to adapt, because if it doesn't, your muscles, bones, tendon, and spirit become very susceptible to being broken or torn while running. And third, their goals are just not very well defined. Running can change your life, but if you don't know exactly what you want to change, then it's going to be very easy for you to stop after you get sore or you potentially get hurt. If you don't have a goal, you won't be as inclined to just push past the discomfort. How do we avoid this? By going nice and slow in the beginning and gradually working our way up towards our goals as we get stronger and our endurance increases. By doing this, not only do we create a linear line of progression with goals we care about, but we limit our chances of injuries and increase our chances of making sure running becomes a staple of our lives. So now that we're actually running now, we want to really invest in proper footwear. As someone who has flat feet and is very susceptible to foot pain or injuries, it's very important for what shoes I wear. And to know what the right shoes are for you, you have to know what kind of feet you have. So for example, I'm flat-footed, which means I want to look for shoes that have more support on it than someone who is regular-footed. So you really have to figure out where your feet lie within that spectrum. You can also buy running shoes for great value, but if you have specific needs like I do, it will not hurt you at all to spend the money to get some better quality. For example, I have these Brooks right here. They're pretty beat up, and we'll get into that in a second. But as you can see here, these are really good shoes. The sole, like the feet aren't exactly too bad. These shoes really are made for support. If you look these up, I don't know the exact name. I'll probably put the brand up on the screen. But these type of shoes right here are great for flat-footed people because it had the arch support needed for someone like me. And also with that, you'll want to replace them pretty semi-regularly in my opinion. Most running shoes have about 300 to 500 miles on them, and so you'll want to start looking for signs and wears and tears even before that. So for example, these shoes may have like 300-ish miles maybe, but you can see like you see like the little hole in the top. It's pretty beat up on the sides. Still a good shoe, but as time goes on, the support starts to wear and you really start feeling it in your knees. So the 3 signs you need to know is that if you start noticing tears in your shoes, if it's been over a year running in them consistently, and if you start noticing pain in your knees or your back or anywhere else that typically wasn't there until just recently in those shoes. If you see any of those signs, it's time to get a new pair of kicks, my man. And this next tip, it might be the most important tip I'm going to give you, and that's to stretch like your life depends on it. And what I mean by that is, if you take nothing away from this video, if you can't do anything on a given day besides move around, I want you to move around and I want you to stretch. Arms, legs, torso, anything on your body that has muscles that are going to be used within running or any regular day activity, it needs to be stretched out. We do this not only because it warms our muscle up before we run to prevent injury during the run, but after the run, we can then relax any stressed muscles and prevent injuries that happen from just sitting down. So here's what you'll need to do. First, before you run, you'll want to do a pre-stretch. To begin the pre-stretch, you'll want to focus on dynamic stretching, or stretching that involves you moving your body while you're doing it. Some examples of really good stretches are high knee variations, lunges, Frankenstein to stretch out your hamstring, karaoke, which helps you with your back, and many other stretches that you can do that are very mobile. And then after you do that, you want to do a little bit of static stretching. Now, I don't recommend doing too much, but just doing a little bit of what's necessary. So if you start feeling that your quads or your thighs or if your hips are really tight, you just get on the ground and stretch those out like you need to. And during the run, which I have to say, because many people kind of don't do this, when you're running and you feel pain somewhere, especially in your back or somewhere that's really bothering you, do not hesitate to stop and stretch during your run. There is no shame, especially when you're not racing, to stop and stretch out your body. There's no point in getting hurt when there's nothing on the line. And then when the run comes to an end, it's time to do your post-run stretch. And you'll want to do 2 things. First, you want to do a cool down jog for 30 seconds. Yes, I know you're tired, but if you do a cool down jog, it will decrease the amount of lactic acid that are just chilling in your legs, waiting to tighten up and cramp on you. And once you're done with your cool down jog, you want to do your second thing, which is static stretching, which you'll do this because it's usually recommended to not go back into your day-to-day life until you get done stretching after a workout. Also, a little freebie, if you can invest in a muscle gun or a muscle roller, please do. It makes a ton of a difference. So a little muscle roller like this was $10 on Amazon. Whole world of a difference for me during cross country and track season. Just being able to roll out my muscles and my legs. All that type of good stuff you can get rolled out for 10 bucks. Now you can do something more expensive like a muscle gun, which will cost you anywhere from like $30 to $70, $80 if you're willing to spend the money. But if you're not, this will do just fine for you. Summarize this point, because this is by far the longest point. I have to emphasize it because it's the most important point. Taking a few minutes to stretch every day will not only improve your running experience, but your life later on when you're 60 years old and you're able to still reach down and pick up stuff, or you're still able to go on a run. It makes a small sacrifice now, and you in the future will thank you later. So now you've done all of that during your running days. The final thing that you want to do is the days you aren't running. So during your rest days, you need to take those serious. Your rest days are crucial to your longevity. Your body is not a robot and you need days to rest. Unless you're training in a sport like cross country or track, or you have a race in the next few days, there's really no need to be running every day for multiple weeks on end. Matter of fact, you could actually be decreasing your speed by overtraining. So what you really want to do is that you want to take about 1 to 2 rest days a week, depending on your schedule. And during those rest days, you need to be very intentional with what you do. And by that, I mean just don't do the same action. If you like running, play a different sport. Go bicycling if you like cardio that much. Go swimming. Do something else that won't put as much strain on your legs because of overuse injuries. That's what we're trying to prevent here on rest days if you want to stay active. Or you could just very well just not do anything at all. That is also a very valid option, especially if you work out very intensely 5 days a week. When it comes to diet, don't eat junk and crap.
Now, obviously,
You can have a little snack and you can eat stuff that tastes good, but don't treat your rest days as that, oh, I'm just gonna run this off, because in reality, what you put inside of you is what will come out of you. So not just only on the toilet will be shit, but also your performance out on the grass will be shit. And then overall, you'll be feeling like shit. Now, we don't want to do that, do we? So how we're gonna prevent that is we're gonna eat like it was a regular day, and you know, even if we do have a little bit of treats or we have something we know is not good for us, like a little fried chicken. I love me some fried chicken. Oh, but whatever you do, make sure you do it in moderation, because whatever you put in you is what will come out of you. And then also, on top of all of that, please, this shouldn't be said, but it really does need to be said, because a lot of people day by day I notice can't do this. Please get plenty of sleep. It's not even a negotiable thing. You have to get plenty of sleep, especially as an athlete, as someone who wants to run, as someone who wants to get better physically. You want to get plenty of sleep. If you can, at the bare minimum, get at least 6.5, 7. Now, I think that's too little. I think you need to get at least 8 to 9, especially if you're a teenager, adolescent year like me. If you're a bit older, like 25 to anything above 25 and beyond, you can afford 6-7 hours of sleep depending on your schedule. But if you do not have any insane scenarios that require you to sleep less than 6 hours, you should not be sleeping less than 6 hours. And so that means also, when you follow your routine, you're not staying up till 3 in the morning and you have yourself scheduled to run at 6, and so now you only got 3 hours of sleep because you wanted to stay up all night. No, bro, just go to sleep when you're supposed to, or push it back a little bit so you can get that 8 hours, and so you can go on that run even if it is later in the day. Just whatever you do, get your sleep. Don't play around with sleep. Sleep is how you recover. Sleep is how you win. So don't deprive yourself of such an advantage. Your rest days are crucial to your longevity, so take them serious. I'm not saying you have to be perfect on those days. Look, I'm not either. I'm human. You just have to be conscious of what you're doing. Take your rest day serious next time, and watch when you go on the run the next day. You're gonna feel a lot better than what you used to feel like. I'm not gonna beat around the bush. Running fucking sucks. As much as I love it, running can really suck, especially when you're training for higher miles and to get faster times. The running doesn't get any easier, you just get tougher. With that said, running is an ultra fulfilling sport that had brought me so much joy in my life and so many memories and experiences that I would have never had been through otherwise if it wasn't for running. I'm confident that if you follow the tips that I laid out in this video down to a T, you'll look back to yourself a few years down the line with many miles under your belt, and you'll thank yourself for making such a wonderful change to your life. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And again, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, toodaloo!